Serious. Redditors who believe they've thrown their lives away, where did it all go wrong for you? Story 1. I refused to seek help for my alcohol problems and I caused a car crash that ended my career. I also refused to acknowledge that my wife and I were toxic for each other and the ensuing arguments cost me my children and any hope of ever salvaging my marriage. Also, I know it's probably codependency talking, but I still love her and my heart breaks every time I think about what our lives would be like if we had just gone to counseling and I was honest about my problems. Not necessarily my life, but I definitely tanked my future with my choices. I once had a promising military career. I was a senior NCO with a sure shot at making the first sergeant within a few years. At the time of this story, I had just re-enlisted. I got a nice bonus and a ranger school slot out of the deal. I was given orders to Fort Campbell and was to report to the 101st Airborne after completing the ranger school en route. I had everything going for me. I had a wife and a beautiful family of 3 sons. I was respected by my unit, my soldiers, and my chain of command. I survived 30 months of combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, and my career was just about to enter a new chapter in the garrison world. I was also attending online college for free through military TA, and I had big plans on retiring from the military to work for the NSA once I finished my degree in cybersecurity. This happened right after I got back from Afghanistan. What people didn't know at the time was that my wife and I were struggling to get along. It was like we were drifting apart, but we both refused to admit it. So for my entire tour in Afghanistan, we were arguing on a nearly constant basis. And on top of all of this, she was pregnant again. I was hiding all this from my unit at the time out of shame and embarrassment. I don't think they ever knew how stressed out I really was because I kept a very stoic and emotionless demeanor about it. I hide stuff well like that. If only I had talked to someone, because when I got home from tour, I started pouring liquor out into my problems. And things only escalated from there. I managed to get a PTSD diagnosis and they basically just threw benzodiazepines at the problem. Before I knew it, I became a high-functioning alcoholic using Ativan to control withdrawal symptoms, but no one had any idea. I became physically dependent and started drinking during the day, still managing to hide it from my unit. The arguments and chaos between my wife and I kept getting worse, but I was in denial and completely blind to how toxic we had actually become for each other. Months later, on the day my 4th son was born, I was hungover, but still drove my wife to the hospital. We got there safely and she delivered the baby without any complications. Beautiful baby boy, but they were worried about his vitals, so he was to be monitored in the NICU for a few days. Later that afternoon, I had to take my car back to base for a brief moment to gather a few things for my wife because they were admitting her to the hospital also. Somehow, on the way back to the base, I managed to rear-end a stopped vehicle. The guy lived, but he got sent to the hospital for whiplash. The police breathalyzed me when they got onto the scene and I was immediately arrested. Even after not drinking all day, my BAC was still at .10. I didn't even feel like I had been drinking, but still, I caused property damage and injured the other driver and blew over the limit. I was completely messed up and I knew it. Just like that, I had a felony DUI on my record and my career was over. Long story short, I lost all the opportunities I had before. Lost my re-enlistment bonus, and I lost my career and the respect of my command team. I was kicked out of the military, I lost my security clearance, my tuition assistance, and my GI Bill benefits. In the aftermath of my discharge, we moved back home to live with a family that could help us get through it, and things only got worse from there. I fell deep into depression over the loss of my career, but still didn't quit drinking. The arguments continued to spiral downward, and eventually we got our kids taken away by the police and she was convicted of Child Protective Services after a very intense argument. This was the final straw for my marriage and we separated after that. My wife went back to her home state and my kids are staying with my grandparents. I'm paying her child support until we can close the case that got them taken away, and so here I am, broke, depressed, childless, and going through a divorce. I feel completely ashamed and miserable with how things turned out for me and my family. I have little to no hope that my life, relationships, finances, or opportunities will ever recover from this. Story 2. So I'm pushing 40, but I guess I started throwing my life away in my teens. I left high school after 3 years with an equivalency and barely finished a couple of semesters of college before just dropping it. Wanted to take a gap year and was forced to keep going, and I burnt out because I'm not built for traditional learning environments. And then basically just messed around all through my 20s hoping that I would be able to be a self-made man. I used to love to play my guitar for at least 30 minutes every day. I would play and think about how it would be really cool if I ever got to play in front of people and have them enjoy the performance. I love to write. I wrote a book of short stories and I self-published it. and I love to make people laugh. I did stand-up comedy for a little while and had a webcomic for a while too. All through my life, I was doing these things for myself and hoped they'd, just play out into something I could do professionally. But professionally, all I've ever done is just work dead-end day jobs. I work for a small company as a software support and training specialist these days. I barely make enough money to survive. It's only in the past year that I've finally gotten to a point where I actually feel at all stable, and that's pretty much because the entire world is collapsing now. I haven't touched my guitar in almost 3 years. When I was finally in my mid-30s, I got brave enough to try and share my playing with others. I realized just how bad I was. I remember the looks on the other guitarist's face like, is this guy for real? I can't even pick it up without feeling like a frickin' fool. Can't even play it for my own enjoyment anymore. It's just so tainted for me. I haven't written anything substantial in years either. It's been 8 years since I self-published, just failed. I had another project right before the book and it failed as well. Recently, I've decided that I need to stop even thinking of myself as a writer, specifically because being a writer is all I really want to do. And since I clearly am not making it as a writer, I need to let go of that dream and get real about things. Same for any kind of comedy or entertaining people at all. I've never put in the time and work needed to turn either of those things into a living, and I've recently realized that thinking about it constantly while not having the guts or energy to act on it is just unhealthy. Another part of myself I need to sever and give up on. My job, at least, is secure. I'm one of the 2 people that knows our software well enough to train people in it. This job will not last forever, though. I can no longer see a future. In my mind, my future was always me writing or making people laugh, doing something creative. I failed completely. I have no education to fall back on. I have a wonderful family and an awful family, but no family that has the resources to help me financially if I were to even want to try again in making something of myself outside of my day job. I have no savings and I have no assets, but I do still have a decent pile of debt after having to leave the home that I used to love but ended up being priced out of. I love my significant other and our pet bunnies and my family, but the fact is that my life, at least the life I've been living for the past 3 decades, is over. I don't want to die, but I have no idea how to live. Totally lost and I have no resources, and in a very real sense, I've thrown my life away. Now I just sit here, day after day, subsisting. How do you live a life if everything that you want, which you don't already have, is totally unattainable? I just don't know. Anyway, I saw this thread, had these thoughts, and figured I'd let them out. I don't even know if this made any sense, and honestly, it doesn't really matter. Not many things matter to me these days, but thanks for reading. I have every intention of continuing to write. I chose my words above very carefully, but I didn't actually make that clear. I'm not giving up on writing. I would go insane. It's just compulsive behavior, really. I'm constantly making up stories or characters in my head, and sometimes they demand to be let out. What I am giving up is sharing them. What I'm giving up is trying to make anything out of them other than something that sits in a folder on my desktop. Also comedy. I'll always write jokes, but I gave up on this quite a while ago now. I don't have the energy to be a stand-up comedian, and I hate bars and clubs. If I didn't have to work a day job, I might actually be able to commit to standing up enough to make it into something. As it is, if I have to work all day, I don't want to spend all the rest of my time working obsessively and perfecting my act for 1 or 2 gigs a week just for fun. But like with writing in general, I'll keep writing bits. And finally, the guitar. I never thought I'd be able to make it as a musician. I only ever played for myself, otherwise I would have taken lessons and actually learned music. I don't entirely understand what happened with this. All I know is that I took my guitar out one day, tried to play with a couple of work colleagues, and ever since that day, playing just doesn't make me happy anymore. It makes me brutally self-conscious, and I don't like it. I don't claim to understand it, but know this. I'm not playing because I realized I can't be a rock god. I'm not playing because the joy has just left it. Oh, actually, finally, also, I'm aware that I probably have depression, and I actually have struggled with mental illness all my life. I'm also a poor person in the US, so yeah, I have no professional help coming to me. I'm not nearly rich enough for the luxury of health. Story 3. Like with many people, I think it went wrong around 18 to 25 years old. Was more or less pushed by various environmental factors in a direction without really thinking about who I was or who I wanted to be. I just followed societal and parental expectations and sure enough, ended up in a career I care little about and feel like a zombie on a daily basis, like dying. What sucks is that before 18, I never had a bad time at all. I cared for school, I always tried to do my best, but after 18, everything went too quickly. I had to pick a career, etc. Now at 30 plus, I feel nothing from my life and career, but I'm also in the paradox that I don't want to start all over again to go for a career that really interests me, because going through college and university all over again just feels too much of a battle, going from working professional with money to unemployed year one student. I just feel that just a small window of a couple of years, 18 to 25, decided my entire life for me and ruined it forever. My only advice for people is to gain some maturity, ask themselves what they truly want to be, and only then embark on studies. You need intention in life. Parental expectations or being a good boy or a good girl trying to do their best just isn't enough. Story 4. I've made many strings of bad decisions which have led me to where I am. I'm hung out with the wrong crowd, which normalized and reinforced my early bad decisions. I don't blame the people I was hanging out with, though. I made my own decisions. For instance, most of my close high school friends dropped out of college during winter break sophomore year. I went back to school, and had I not withdrawn after passing spring break, I'd have failed out that year. I was all about smoking pot and drinking booze and left a music theory/composition major to play in a band that never got out of the garage. That led me to doing landscaping and security guard work instead. I ended up going to a 6-month How to Be a Computer Guy class in the early 90s. I landed a good job with a good company, but failed the test. Scrambling again, I landed a temp job at a huge company. I went permanent, but didn't bother getting in the 401k because I was sure this was just a summer job until I found something real. 10 years later, I got into the 401k. 15 years after that, I'm still working a job I hate at a company I despise, and I'm praying I can stay on another 8 years so I can retire at 55 with 33 years in, but they're trying to outsource us as quickly as possible. I did pick up a 2-year degree along the way, but any IT department seems to want a 4-year degree for a starting position. If I lose this job I've had for 25 years, I think it's going to be very hard to find employment as a 47-year-old guy with an associate's in liberal studies. My love life has been worse than my career. I feel like I'm terminally single, but I'm no incel. I know the problem is me. I'm a volcel? Who knows? I am what I am, as Popeye would say, and I do occasionally wonder what would have happened if I stayed in college. Would I have gotten a degree in music and become a teacher, switched to material science and become a scientist, found the girl of my dreams and settled down, had kids? Who can say? Maybe this is my best life, but I often feel like I had the potential to just be much more than I am. Story 5. Warning, I'm going to vent here because I currently don't have a therapist or anything, so if you don't want to read a stranger wallowing in their self-perpetuating misery, then turn away, friend. But if you're up for some good old-fashioned storytelling, then welcome. So, I always had anxiety issues. I don't know why. Had rejection issues too, and constantly felt like I had to be perfect. Again, I don't know why. I was having a great time in high school. It was the first 6 months, then randomly one day I saw red out of nowhere and tried to smash my skull open on a pub wall in front of my dad and all my friends. I don't know what caused it. I also randomly started crying in class, which is weird because I'm a fairly stoic person and was actually having fun in high school. My dad asked if he should homeschool me, and I said yes. I thought my friends would be still interested in seeing me, and only one did, but we lost touch because I fell in love with her, or at least I thought so. I remember I had this really cute redhead French teacher, such a sweet dude. Anyway, I was homeschooled and I could optionally take my exams, but because I wasn't getting a structured curriculum in the same way as others, because I thought I could just read history books all the time, instead, by the time I had to do my exams, I'd realized I had no other skills, no math or anything, not even basic. So because of perfectionism, anxiety, OCD, panic attacks, and depression, I still live with my parents. I've never had a job, never had a proper significant other, no friends outside of family and pets, no qualifications, and I was about to find a drama school and try some classes, but then a certain worldwide event came about and decided to wreck everything. So yeah, at least I'm clean living, have a roof, parents, awesome pets, and all healthy and happy. And I hope we all remain so and have better lives after this pandemic is over. Story 6. During school, I didn't really know how to befriend my peers, so I played video games as an escape from bullying. I did okay with grades, but never put any effort. After high school, I went to university, but was just drinking and playing video games in dorms and didn't go to actual lectures, mainly because we had a gym class in university for some reason, and I hated sports. After a couple of months of that, I got expelled and spent years 19 through 25 years old just sitting in my room playing video games and drinking. I did some long-distance learning for 3 years in that time, and I actually almost finished the degree, but in actuality, the school was just an excuse to sit in my room and play Dota 2 while chugging beers. A distraction for my parents I never intended to finish. At 25, my parents finally threatened me to get a job or I would live on the street, so I got a job at a hotel front desk being the socially inept neckbeard that I was. That was a moment when the giant fist of "you have pissed all your formative years in the toilet and have nothing to show for it, and now you are an adult with zero discipline, zero relationships, or life experience," walloped me into crippling self-esteem issues and unshakable depression. I'm 29 now. I still work there, and financially I'm actually doing fine. But without drinking and drugs, I can't handle the regret and pain of being aware. I've yet to develop a social life or get friends or get my first girlfriend, and it only gets harder as time goes on. I can't let people close and never talk about myself because there's nothing to tell, and I know people won't want to be friends with a friendless mess-up, and girls sure as crap won't want any of that as well. I just want a regular, normal, boring life like the majority of people. That's all. Story 7. I'm trans. I knew when I was a kid but didn't have the words for it and got socially shamed hard by literally everyone from I'd say age 4 onwards if I played dress-ups or wanted to play with girls' toys or anything at all. I completely locked it down and forced myself to just accept that this is how things are. I'm a boy/teen/man, don't even bother to think about it, and don't ever tell anyone at any cost. Twisted myself inside out in denial. I stopped eating when puberty hit because I didn't want to get big. Literally starved me out of gaining any muscle or fat for a while. I self-harmed. I did risky hookups online when I was old enough, which I'd then stuff into the shame box with everything else. The mental stress was absolutely insane when I look back on it. I effectively had a split personality, a day-to-day real me that everyone knew, and a private nighttime me who did this other stuff and thought about these things, and the two almost never existed at the same time. I'd literally be hanging out with friends or family without any knowledge of the shadier, more dangerous stuff I was doing. It's worth mentioning that I grew up in a religious suburban family. At one point, they sent me to the school chaplain instead of a psychologist, which my dad doesn't believe in. And I'll never know for sure how it would have played out, but I suspect that not telling them anything about my weird gender feelings was the smarter choice. How messed up is that, right? A 13-year-old shouldn't think that, let alone be right about it. Oh, and I discovered alcohol too, and that ramped up to over 40 standard drinks per day for up to a week at a time, and never less than 15 for years at a time. I honestly don't know why I'm alive. Livers have been checked and it's fatty but not scarred. Not yet. Came out to me when I was 27. Complete mental breakdown. The denial was the thing that kept me alive through school and home life, and I could not handle leaving it, but I was no longer able to keep up the sheer mental energy it takes to compartmentalize yourself so completely. I'm now 32 years old and on a disability pension. Your mental health has to be amazingly really bad to be counted as disabled on our welfare system. But I was analyzed, prodded, and poked by all sorts of professionals and government officials, and yep, I'm bad enough. Some people come out through all that stuff I went through and can handle it. Some people kill themselves before they ever come out. I'm in the middle. I didn't kill myself, but I can no longer function as a normal person in society. Sometimes I wonder what life would have been like if it had been different when I was a kid. I'm so happy that it's getting better. At least kids today have heard of the concept of transgender people, and not exclusively from crappy transphobic jokes. That's a step up from what it was like for me, and I hope it keeps getting better. I guess this post is an extremely rare bit of trans activism for me. This isn't meant to be a pity party or a sob story. I've made peace with how things went down, and I try not to look back and appreciate all the good things I do have in life. But this hopefully strikes a nerve with someone out there and can make the world a bit more open-minded for the next generation of kids. I didn't choose this. I didn't want to be trans. I tried desperately to make myself not be, and doing so nearly killed me. Let's not do that to the next wave of humans, okay? Let people be who they are. Don't tell them that they're wrong. Story 8. I got lazy with education from a very young age, and in the end, my brain just lacked the ability to apply to anything that required real effort. Then I stopped caring, just got a decent enough job, and that was it. This is life now. Story 9. I focused too much on the long term. I needed to graduate college, so I neglected any potential relationships. Then I needed to get financial stability, so I neglected any potential relationships. Then I woke up at 40 in the middle of a pandemic, all alone, and realized I have nothing that's actually worthwhile.